Florida is currently the locus of a significant legislative debate concerning the state's child labor regulations. A proposed bill is under consideration that seeks to modify existing laws governing the employment of minors, particularly those between the ages of 14 and 17. This legislative effort centers on easing restrictions on working hours, potentially allowing for younger teenagers to take on roles previously unavailable to them. Specifically, the debate includes the prospect of 14-year-olds being permitted to work overnight shifts, a considerable departure from current regulations that limit work during late evening and early morning hours, even during the school week. To fully grasp the underpinnings of this proposed legislation, it is crucial to consider the broader circumstances prevailing within Florida's economic and political landscape. Florida's approach to immigration policy has become increasingly stringent in recent years. The state has actively pursued measures intended to discourage the employment of individuals lacking legal immigration status. These policies have included mandates requiring larger employers to utilize the federal E-Verify system to confirm the legal work eligibility of new hires. The implementation of such measures has had a discernible effect on the labor market, particularly within sectors reliant on lower-wage labor. Businesses operating in industries offering less desirable or physically demanding positions have reported considerable difficulties in securing adequate staffing. This situation of constrained labor supply, coinciding with stricter immigration enforcement, provides the immediate backdrop against which the proposed child labor law modifications must be understood. While the current legal framework in Florida places specific limits on the working hours of minors, the proposed legislation seeks to significantly alter these established norms. The bill under consideration encompasses several key provisions designed to expand the availability of youth labor. Notably, it aims to permit 14-year-olds to engage in work during hours currently prohibited, effectively authorizing overnight shifts even on days when school attendance is required. Furthermore, for 14 and 15-year-olds who are homeschooled, the proposed changes would eliminate time-of-day restrictions entirely, granting them the same work-hour flexibility as adults. In addition to adjusting hourly limitations, the legislation also proposes the removal of guaranteed meal break requirements for older teenagers, specifically those aged 16 and 17. These proposed modifications stand in stark contrast to established child labor protections and raise questions about the underlying rationale and potential repercussions of such a policy shift. To understand the driving force behind this legislative initiative, it is necessary to examine the stated justifications offered by its proponents. Governor DeSantis has publicly articulated a direct link between the proposed child labor law adjustments and the state's immigration enforcement strategies. His statements indicate a preference for filling labor demands with domestic youth, explicitly referencing teenagers and students as a potential workforce to address perceived labor gaps. This rationale suggests a deliberate policy choice to prioritize the employment of younger, local individuals as an alternative to relying on immigrant labor, including those working without legal authorization. The underlying assumption appears to be that expanding the permissible employment of minors can effectively compensate for the reduced availability of immigrant workers resulting from stricter immigration policies. This perspective warrants closer scrutiny, particularly concerning its potential economic and social consequences. However, assessments from economic analysts present a contrasting perspective on the likely outcomes of these policy shifts. Concerns have been raised that relaxing child labor regulations may not achieve the intended effect of resolving labor shortages and could, in fact, exacerbate existing economic challenges. Economists have cautioned that an increased reliance on teenage labor could contribute to inflationary pressures within the state's economy. Furthermore, it is argued that such measures might prove counterproductive in the long term, potentially worsening labor shortages by failing to address the fundamental structural issues within the labor market. Beyond the purely economic considerations, data from the U.S. Department of Labor reveals a significant trend that warrants attention: a near tripling of child labor violations in Florida in recent years. This statistic suggests a pre-existing vulnerability within the state's labor system, and raises concerns that easing restrictions could further compromise the well-being and educational opportunities of young workers. Florida's current legislative deliberations on child labor laws are not isolated events, but rather the direct consequence of specific state policies concerning immigration and labor. The proposition to ease restrictions on youth employment, presented as a remedy for labor scarcity arising from immigration enforcement, presents a complex calculus. Economic forecasts indicate potential inflationary pressures and persistent labor market imbalances as possible outcomes. Simultaneously, the documented increase in child labor violations within Florida serves as a stark reminder of existing vulnerabilities. This convergence of factors underscores the intricate relationship between immigration policy, labor market adjustments, and the ethical considerations surrounding the employment of minors, demanding careful evaluation of both the intended and unintended ramifications of the current legislative direction.